Okay, hello everybody. This is Terry Carl, Community Manager for the Premom team, here with special guest, Nurse Linda, who we're all pretty familiar with. Thank you so much for joining us again, Nurse Linda.
Oh, I love doing this, no problem.
And she is going to be talking today on one of your hot topics, which is on the TWW, or 2-week window. All things, questions you have about the 2-week window. It's the wait. I always say the 2-week wait. I don't know why I say 2-week window. I think a fertile window, I think. So she's talking about the 2-week wait. So feel free to jump in anytime during this presentation about your questions about this very annoying period of time between ovulation and finding out if you're pregnant. Can you talk a little bit more about that, Nurse Linda?
Sure. My experience with the 2-week wait, working in infertility and that, it is really stressful. There's not anything magical I'm about to say that's going to reduce stress, but certainly we can reduce some of that anxiety a little bit. We're not going to get rid of it, but we can reduce it if we just understand a little bit more about what's going on during the 2-week wait. Basically, where do we want to start? So let's talk about things like symptoms and what are we looking for? What are we not looking for? That kind of thing. The reality is don't look for symptoms yet, because what's going on in our body is we have a lot of progesterone around. That's, of course, what happens in the second half of our cycle between ovulation and our next period or our next positive pregnancy test. Is we have progesterone around. That's the hormone. And that hormone in and of itself is what is responsible. This is when we're not pregnant. That is the hormone that's responsible for giving us PMS and just giving us those bodily symptoms, sore breasts, this kind of thing. That's progesterone. Now, not all of us are sensitive to progesterone. Some people don't experience PMS at all, and others are debilitated by it. But regardless, it's still just progesterone's effects. Now, progesterone is also the hormone that stays on board while we're pregnant. It gives us a lot of our pregnancy symptoms. So that's why trying to analyze, how do I feel? Do I feel, certainly things like morning sickness and nausea aren't going to be anywhere around yet. At least from a pregnancy point of view. They could be around just because you're so darn stressed waiting for this, but not because of the hormone levels. Your beta HCG levels aren't going to be high enough to cause any true symptoms yet. That's why, when people aren't trying to get pregnant, they have no idea that they're pregnant during this 2-week time. So therefore, you're also really not going to know if you're pregnant. So don't look for these symptoms. As for general anxiety, gosh, the reality is it's about control. And for some reason, we think that we have the power to not make this happen, either because we did things we weren't supposed to, or because we didn't do things that we should have done. That's what we do to ourselves. We really muster up all this anxiety thinking that we should be doing something or we should stop doing something. But the reality is when you want to know what works, you simply ask, what happens out there in Mother Nature? What happens for women who aren't trying and doing all the LH kits and really struggling every month to make this happen? What do they do? And the reality is nobody does anything special, and they all basically stay pregnant. So the reality is I don't care if you still have a cup of coffee. I don't care if you still have a glass of wine at night. Just let go. Just realize that this is just a waiting period, and you can wear special socks and you can eat pineapple and you can do all kinds of things. None of that stuff is going to hurt. But sometimes we really empower ourselves to feel like we have some kind of control. So when if God forbid it doesn't happen, first thing we do is start analyzing what we did or what we didn't do to get that result. And again, the reality is you just don't have that power. It really is nothing but a pure waiting game. And How do we make waiting easy? You know, you're waiting to hear back about a job interview. You're waiting to go on vacation. We're waiting to receive stimulus checks, and we're waiting for things all the time. You know, and so, yeah, we know how to wait. We don't have to like it, but we get it. We know how to wait. And that's what this is. But really, let's take some of that anxiety and stress off of ourselves and stop being so hard on ourselves about it. You know, because again, we seem to think we have this power. Usually we think we have some kind of power to make it not happen. I used to, I'm mostly experienced in IVFs with patients, in vitro fertilization. And in that 2-week wait after their embryo transfer, you know, and after spending, you know, $15,000, this is all very, you know, anxiety riddled. And so they would ask, they know embryos are there, we put them there, and they want to know what they can and can't do. And the reality is what I had to teach them over the years is, honestly, there isn't anything I can tell you to do or not to do. Have intercourse, that's fine. Again, ask Mother Nature what she does out there. And the reality is people don't even know they're pregnant during this time period, so they're not doing anything special. And again, these people get pregnant, have babies, no problem at all. So sometimes I worry more about the anxiety we cause ourselves. So just know this, you already do this all the time, you wait. So this is just, it is a 2-week wait, but don't put so much more into it. Remember, for even the young people, your chance of getting pregnant in any month is, there's a higher chance that you won't get pregnant in a specific month. Of course, that accumulates and it's much higher over time, but in any one month, we have no control over if that egg is normal and if an embryo was created. More than likely, again, if you're very young in your 20s or early 30s, half of your eggs are already abnormal. That means I'm in an ovulated abnormal egg every other month, you know, on a statistical basis. So I'm not going to get pregnant from those. And as we get older, that ratio of abnormal eggs gets higher. And again, we're not going to get pregnant, and nothing's wrong. There's nothing to fix. You did everything right, but it was an abnormal egg. That's the biggest thing we have to overcome. And the truth is we can't do anything about that. That's age related. And we just have to wait for that normal egg that will give us the baby we've been waiting for, you know? So that's why we're not getting pregnant. And so even though we're obviously upset and disappointed, we shouldn't be shocked if it didn't happen. Currently, if I share a personal story, my daughter, who's 33, is trying to get pregnant right now. And she's got 2 little ones, and she's trying for a third. She's perfectly fertile. But when she didn't get pregnant that first month, I thought I was dealing with one of my IVF patients. I mean, just what's going on? What happened? What if I can't after this? Why would you be having any of these thoughts? There's nothing wrong with you not getting pregnant the first month. As a matter of fact, I expect that. But yet, you know how it is. You guys all well know how it is. The fear. It's the fear. It's the fear of not being able to get pregnant again and produce a sibling for the children we have, or if it's just becoming a mom and getting pregnant the first time. That fear is what is controlling all of our anxiety, you know. So we just have to let that go, as best I can say, because you don't have control.
Would you recommend waiting until like just before that missed period or at that missed period to start doing tracking again? Because you can track BBT with that progesterone you talked about after ovulation. But it does seem like sometimes women are obsessing about what's happening with the BBT. Is it dipping? Wondered your thoughts on that.
Right. Well, so the basal body temperature stays up because of progesterone. So when our body realizes, she didn't get pregnant this month. Okay, we don't need any progesterone around. It shuts off the progesterone like a faucet. It is that immediate drop in progesterone that within literally a day, we will start a period. That's what causes the period to come, because our body just stops producing progesterone. Well, that stopping of the progesterone is also what's going to make our temperature drop. So yeah, your temperature is going to stay up until you have a period if you're not pregnant. So it kind of, you know what, that's a good question when talking about should we be tracking and taking these beta HCG tests, and how early should we try? Well, again, there's no wrong answer here. You could try early. It's not going to hurt anything or help anything. You know, it's just going to give you information. Now you may find, and I used to tell my IVF patients this, I know you guys are going to test. So I know you are. I would warn them though, try not to test so early because you're just going to bring on extra stress. It's going to be negative early on, and you could still very well be pregnant. So you're just going to bring on more anxiety with yourself. So trying not to test too early, you know, again, I would say I wouldn't recommend testing, you know, but 10 days after ovulation, maybe. And again, understand it might be too early. You might not get a positive right away. You know, again, it's just part of the waiting game, and you do what you need to do to help yourself. There's no wrong answer here.
What kinds of recommendations do you give for women who are struggling with that waiting, like to distract themselves or whatever?
Right. Well, you know, again, the Premom group on Facebook, I've become addicted to, and I just want to get in there, and I just want to help everybody and talk to everybody, and because I can see the stress they're dealing with, you know, and everybody's analyzing the HCG beta tests and all of that. Everybody's different. Some people really need to get away from this during the wait period and try not to even think about it, because they understand, and I understand well too, the obsession that happens. So they try to really remove themselves. Others need to actually really become more involved to work through it. So getting on our Premom Facebook group, for example, and just chatting with other gals, that in itself is a, you know, if you will, it's a form of therapy. Who better understands than these other gals who are on, you know? So again, you know, it's like anything else. How do you distract yourself? Well, there's like, you know, for every person, there's a different answer on what's the best way to distract yourself. I'm somebody who doesn't do well with trying to ignore things and, you know, going to the gym more and doing other things, arts and crafts. Now I need to feed my obsession. That is what makes me feel a little bit better. Others are different. So there's no right answer here. It really boils down to, because again, it's whatever we're talking about mental health. There's nothing clinical I can share with you here. This is all mental health. So how do we do this for ourselves about any other topic? You know, how do we handle it?
Great. And we have a couple of comments following up with the BBT.
Sure.
Someone's talking about, does it still stay up? So it would if you're pregnant.
That's right. That's right.
Eventual drop, which is why some women will freak out about their times, because times can have little ups and downs, which can be unnerving for some women. But yes, it should stay up, right?
That's right. Because your progesterone is going to, when your body hey, she's pregnant, progesterone stays on, that faucet stays open. And as long as progesterone is staying around, then that basal body temperature is going to stay up.
And when is a good time to start paying more attention to symptoms? Like when you're starting to when you are pregnant, what are some symptoms to watch for?
Right. Usually symptoms that will come up will be the breasts. That's one of the biggest ones, because not only are you going to have progesterone around when you're pregnant, you're going to have more of it around. So again, progesterone will generally make the breasts very sensitive. Like, God help you when you have to take your bra off at the end of the day. You know, like, ow, it just hurts. And so that's one of the first symptoms that you'll usually get, is really sensitive breasts. Things like morning sickness come a little bit later, if it comes at all. But as that beta HCG level is going up, that's generally what will bring on morning sickness. Of course, you know, morning sickness is always a good thing. It's a good sign. It's miserable to have, but it's a good sign. And it's also okay if you don't have it. Again, you know, we tend to want to analyze every little thing. But I would say, you know, breasts, certainly if you're somebody who's PMSy, that means you're somebody who is sensitive to progesterone, then you're probably going to be a little bit more symptomatic when you're pregnant. I'm not personally, I'm somebody who wasn't. I'm not PMSy. My body wasn't really sensitive to progesterone. So I didn't have a lot of symptoms with pregnancy, except that the breast one. That one I definitely did have. But otherwise, in the very beginning, there's not a lot of symptoms. And by the time you really, truly start having symptoms, like you have to urinate more, you got pressure, you're feeling some cramping, that's all normal. But that tends to come, maybe as we get now, how far along are we? When you first find out you're pregnant, missed period, you are, boom, 4 weeks pregnant. Not because you got pregnant 4 weeks ago, but because your last period was 4 weeks ago generally. And that's how we time pregnancies. Because women generally don't know exactly. Well, of course, we all probably do on Premom because you're doing all the LH surgeries and that. But, in the regular population, women don't know exactly when they got pregnant, but they could tell a doctor, well, I could tell you when my last period was. So they always time pregnancies based on your last period. So boom, you're 4 weeks pregnant when you have a missed period. So a couple of weeks later, when you're 6 weeks pregnant, then I would say you're going to start feeling more symptoms. Things like cramping, which of course could be very scary, and spotting. These are actually very normal in early pregnancy. As a matter of fact, at least half of the women will spot during pregnancy. Perfectly normal. I always equate this to, and I tell folks, if you have very sensitive gums, and you brush your teeth very rigorously, you're probably going to have some bleeding gums. Well, that's because the gums are inflamed and they're just waiting for a reason to bleed a little bit. Well, your cervix is the same way. That's where the bleeding tends to come from. It's very friable, it's very fragile, it's very engorged, and anything, it could be bearing down, it could be intercourse, it could be heavy housework, it could be nothing, and you might experience some spotting. There are certainly even women who have had flows and have still been fine. So spotting can be scary. Cramping. Our uterus only knows one thing, and that's cramping. That's what it does. The uterus is one big muscle, and it cramps to grow and it cramps to get smaller. So as it's it's so bloaty when you're first pregnant. So you're going to feel some cramping sensations, because if you want to be technical, when you go to give birth, labor pains are just cramps. Well, they're cramps, but they're like so out of this world kind of cramps. But nonetheless, that's really all they are. So that's perfectly normal for you to have a little bit of cramping as well in the beginning. Nothing to worry about. But of course, if somebody's going to miscarry, bleeding and cramping are also symptoms of that. So that's why that's so scary. But I just want you guys to understand how normal it is.
When would it be a good idea to talk to your physician if you're experiencing certain symptoms similar to that when you're first pregnant?
Yeah, well, what I always would teach my patients is it's more worrisome when there's a trend. So let's take bleeding or spotting, for example. We know what happens when we start our period. There is a trend. Now we're all different, but you might start out just spotting in the morning and then you flow in the afternoon. You might start out spotting for a couple of days, but then it increases to a flow or what have you. There's a trend involved. It progresses. I'm looking more for trends. Same with cramping. If you have cramping that is just constant and doesn't go away and keeps getting worse, if you have any kind of spotting or bleeding that is progressing, if you have the two things together. Now, going and seeing our doctor or going to an urgent care or what have you, they're going to usually, they can draw your blood and do an HCG test and they'll get some value. Oh, your beta is 582. What does that mean to me? Well, I already knew I was pregnant. It means I'm pregnant. But I don't know what it was yesterday or the day before. So I really don't know if that's a good number for me to be at right now. More important is, do they do an ultrasound? How far along are you? Can they tell? Can they see a sac? None of this changes the pregnancy. So hurrying to get to a doctor or worrying, should I get to a doctor or not? Keep in mind, there's nothing at this clinic or at the doctor's office or an emergency room. There's nothing anybody's going to do to stop a miscarriage if that's what's going to happen. So again, know that so you don't have as much stress about what if I don't go? Well, again, it's just about learning what's going on. That's literally what all of your OB appointments are about, is learning what's going on. Nothing changes the health of the pregnancy just by them assessing you and listening to heartbeats or doing ultrasounds. So I would say look for when a trend of something is progressing, then I would recommend going and getting checked out.
Okay, we do have another question. Let's see. We have a question about progesterone strips, whether they are helpful.
Well, progesterone strips,
says,
yeah.
Last time I asked if I'm having regular periods, if I'm ovulating. You said yes, with a history of PCOS. I think this causes me anxiety, wondering if I'm ovulating. So I think that's why she's asking about confirming with progesterone strips.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. When you're PCOS, it's a dreaded a lifestyle when you're trying to get pregnant, because I don't know if I'm ovulating or not. I don't know. And so, but progesterone strips will tell you, if you have progesterone around, you ovulate. It goes hand in hand. If you don't ovulate, you won't have progesterone around, and your basal body temperature won't spike. So it is one way to confirm. It's like getting a period. That confirmed you ovulated that month.
Maybe you can help me here. At what point after this? Oh, it's sperm. Okay, at what point after the sperm finds the egg does the HCG start to be produced? I assume it's not immediately on ovulation day, or the 2-week wait wouldn't be such a pain.
Right. So you're right. Just because the sperm met the egg doesn't mean we have HCG. And that happens in the tube, and it takes about 5 days for it to get down to our uterus. It's when this little embryo, which is now called a blastocyst, when it implants in the uterus, then our body starts making HCG. Yeah. So again, and it starts out in obviously very small numbers, things that aren't even going to be measurable yet. That's why I would recommend waiting until at least 10 days after, just so you can see if you have something measurable.
And then someone said, for us to have lots of trouble trying over 10 years, would we be able to get a positive test at 10 days past ovulation?
You can. You can get a positive test. Might be, you've seen it online, the really faint lines, and I need another couple of pair of eyes to look at it. And you know how the gals do. So yeah, you can get a faint line, because again, if you're truly pregnant, you will have some HCG around. Again, that little embryo will generally implant about 5 days after you ovulate. That's what, but again, you need to give the HCG a few days to start, roughly it doubles every 2 days. That's not exact, but roughly.
Okay. Someone is asking where to reach out to you. You can find Nurse Linda right in your Premom app. If you go to more and schedule a consultation, you can find her there. She's also on Instagram and on YouTube, which is everywhere.
I love to talk about this stuff. I love to help you guys. This was all I did all my life. So this is not a job. This is what I do for pleasure. Anytime I can help people who want to have babies and want to build families, that's like such a gift. When I started out in this business, I used to say, I used to think about those people who were musicians and rock stars and basketball players, and how that was their job in life. They got paid to do that. That's how it felt. And it still feels like that. After 22 years, it still feels like that. So I love to do that. So anything, any topic, anything we want to talk about, you guys are always welcome to reach out.
Love that. That's why you're so good at it, because you're so passionate about it.
I do.
What are your final thoughts to leave everybody with for the 2-week wait?
All right. So my final thoughts are, and most of the clients that are on Premom are not infertile women. Not infertile women. They are women who are just trying to get pregnant. Sometimes they've had kids. I had a consult with a gal the other day who already had 4 kids, and she was looking to have her 5th kid, and she was using Premom. You think, oh, she knows how to do this. Well, yeah, but now she's trying to control it. So most of the people we're talking to right now are not infertile, but I will tell you, even though you haven't had any fertility issues in the past, now that you have made this conscientious decision to try to get pregnant, when it doesn't happen right away, and again, it doesn't tend to happen right away, you're getting a little bit of a taste of what truly women who have infertility issues especially women who need assistance to get pregnant. We can't have sex at home anymore to try to get pregnant. We have to go pay a lot of money to go try to get pregnant. Now you've got a little bit of a flavor because it's the fear. It's the fear that what if this doesn't work? What if I can't have my third one like I really wanted? What if, something all of a sudden is wrong? You're getting a taste of that fear, that true infertile, but that's how strong our desire is to procreate for whatever reason, to have our first baby or our fifth baby. Trust me when I tell you, it's just as strong. And when I don't think I can do it, or I think something might be wrong, I am going to go into a panic. But here's the reality. Most of the people I consult with and talk to, especially on Premom, they're perfectly fertile. It just hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. So keep that in mind that most of you, don't have major fertility issues, and you're going to have the baby that you want to have. You are. So we just got to be a little bit patient sometimes. But don't worry, that baby, the one that we're supposed to have, it's coming. It's coming. Keep telling yourself that.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Nurse Linda.
Closing words.
Closing words. I feel like that should be on TED Talks or something. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, all of you, for participating. And good luck to you all, and we'll see you again soon for another video.
Absolutely. Bye-bye, everybody.